recorded and put on the social media, and maybe somebody watched this seminar, may not watch others. So my name is Yuja, I'm a professor in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. And so the transition seminar at USF is sponsored by our department, Center for Urban Transition Research, and also supported by several US DOTs at USF, including NISA, National Institute for Conservation, CPAC, Center for Transition Environment Health, and TomNet, the nutrients for the modeling, also CPAC. It's also facilitated by IT sector. So today we're glad to have our speaker, Mr. Brian Hunter, and he's the Transition Planning Manager for the Florida Department at UT District 7 office. And right now he oversees the metropolitan planning and the trauma development activities. And his primary responsibilities are to interact with stakeholders to reach a consensus on regional transportation priorities and coordinate with municipalities to help plan and fund critical infrastructure improvement. So Brian, although he's still very young, he has worked at FDOT for about 15 years, and he worked in different offices, including aviation, seaport, and freight offices. And Brian has a bachelor's degree from FAU, Florida University, and also a Master of Business Administration degree from Western Governors University. So please join me to welcome Brian, and the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. So like Dr. Zhang said, my name is Brian Hunter. I'm a Transportation Planning Manager at FDOT District 7, which is just across the street here. We're down off McKinley. And so I oversee our government liaison section, our travel demand modeling, and transportation statistics groups. So before I get started, I just want to ask everybody a quick question. When you think of the Florida Department of Transportation, what's the first word that comes to mind? Everybody got any types of projects, what types of roads we own, that kind of thing? Anything? Traffic reduction. That's a good one. Anybody else?
Pilot projects.
What was that one?
Pilot projects.
Pilot project? All right, anybody else? Planning.
Vision Zero.
All right. Anybody else? You got anything? All right, cool. Those are all good ones. I'm glad you guys had a wide variety of choices. That means you already know a little bit about what we do. But I'm going to just talk about a little bit of what we do today, some of our projects, and how you all can be involved in what we do at the department. So this is our mission. It's to provide a safe and effective and efficient transportation system. If you notice, it's not specifically related to cars. It's mode agnostic. So we help support transportation on buses, airports, seaports, trains, bicycle and pedestrian. Basically, if it moves, we're involved in it. And it's part of our mission. And those of you who said safety, you can see it's the third word in our mission statement. That's one of our key focuses. And we don't do anything unless it does improve safety on the roadway. FDOT is a decentralized agency, so our headquarters is in Tallahassee, but the actual project production is done at the different districts. Here in Tampa Bay, we're District 7, but there's the rest of the districts, and we also have the Turnpike, which manages our toll roads that are state-owned. Some of the other toll roads are locally owned, like the Crosstown, that is owned by THEO, which is Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority. But District 7 is Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, Pasco County, Hernando County, and Citrus County. And so this is basically an overview of what the five counties that make up our district look like. And here's the major facilities that we have on that district or within the district. So these are our toll roads. Like I said, some of these are run by local agencies, like the Crosstown, that's run by THEA, Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority, and the Veteran Suncoast is part of the Turnpike system. We have a new one in this area over here. This is the Gateway project that's just wrapping up, and that one will be coming online pretty shortly. Here's our SIS facilities. That stands for Strategic Intermodal Systems. This is those high priority networks that provide regional connectivity for people and goods. They're really the most important roads that we have. And so we invest a significant amount of money to make sure that those have a quality level of service on them. And then the other lines are all of our state roads. So if you notice, there's quite a bit of them. Most of the main roads that you guys drive on a daily basis, if there's more than 2 or 3 lanes, that's probably us that own that. Fowler is a state road, and as is portions of 40th Street, the interstate, Nebraska, everything around this area that are the major roads. And then here's our truck routes and freight corridors. So truck routes are pretty important to us, and these provide connectivity to freight generators. So out here on the Polk County line, if you ever drive on I-4, you'll see there's a whole bunch of warehouses that are popping up on I-4. But if you get a chance to drive down County Line Road, there's about 25 million square feet of distribution center that's been built in the last 10 years out there. And so that's one of our major freight generators. And then we have Port Tampa Bay, and there's a air cargo yard at Tampa International Airport. So these routes feed to those, and then also to those freight destinations. So like a commercial corridor, if you think of west of here on Fowler Avenue, where there's a whole bunch of businesses, used to be a mall, there's a Target just off of Bruce B. Downs, just a little north of there. That's really a commercial corridor. That's a freight generator. So they connect all those back to either the generator or the distributor or the interstate system, so they can make those regional moves. Now, freight has a pretty heavy importance here in the district. In Hillsborough County alone, we have 20% of our jobs are related to freight industries. So that could be working in a warehouse or supporting warehousing activities. There's 140 million square feet of distribution center and manufacturing facilities just here in Hillsborough County alone. We have manufacturing for all different types. So you could have steel plants like off Adamo Drive and like 40 or 39th Street. There's a steel manufacturing place where they make bridge beams, that kind of thing. Concrete plants do the same thing. And then we also have high-tech manufacturing. So like medical equipment. Pinellas Park's a real big one of those. If you get a pacemaker, there's a pretty good chance that it will have been made in Pinellas Park. That's a major employment cluster for that down there. 1 in 5 exporters in the United States are based here in the state of Florida, and they're responsible for $153 billion of annual trade. So you can see that these routes are really important to the economy here in the state of Florida. Here's our transit authorities and their network. So in Hillsborough, we have HART, which is Hillsborough Area Regional Transportation Authority. Over in Pinellas, it's PSTA, Pasco is PCPTA. And so these are the networks or the routes that they serve. And then here's all the airports in the district. So there's 11 public use airports. 2 of those are commercial service that have regularly scheduled airport or regularly scheduled flights. That's Tampa International and St. Pete Clearwater. There's 9 publicly owned public use airports that are like general aviation. So if you have a Cessna or something like that, smaller airplane, that's where they go into. Now the rest of them are not publicly owned. They might be a private airfield or a heliport, something like that. But FDOT is responsible for inspecting and making sure that those have safe operating conditions. So if a tree grows up into the glide path, we let them know that they need to cut that down and that kind of stuff. And then we have 2 deep water seaports, Port Tampa Bay, which is our largest one, and St. Pete Port, which is not as active, but they are down there. So Port Tampa Bay is another critical component of our economy here. It supports $85,000 jobs and has a $17 billion annual impact. And then 50% of all the fuel used in the entire state of Florida comes through Port Tampa Bay. That's a major cargo for them. And they have a direct pipeline over to Orlando International Airport to ship jet fuel out there. And they handle everything from break bulk, which is like aggregate or fuel, things that come in big containers. They break them up and unload them that way. Or that's bulk. Break bulk is palletized cargo. They handle that as well. Ro-ro, which is roll on, roll off. And that's cars, equipment, that kind of thing. And then they have containers like you see driving down the road on the back of a truck. And then here's our railroad network. We have 2 railroads in the district. Class A railroad is CSX, and they're the majority of these. And then up north in Citrus County, there's one small short line railroad, which is Florida Northern, that supplies the power plant up there. And now I'll go a little bit into some of the projects that we have. And if you have any questions or want me to talk about anything specific, just interrupt me. I'm good with that. I don't have anything that I actually absolutely have to cover. So if you got a question, just scream it out and we'll figure out if I'm smart enough to know the answer to it or not. But FDOT participates in quite a lot of different types of projects. On top, you can see the seaport. That's at Port Tampa Bay. And so we help them. They'll come to us and they say, hey, we have a project at Port Tampa Bay that we'd like to get some state funding on. They'll show us what the economics of that project are. It'll go through a benefit cost analysis, and then we'll help them fund it. So in this picture, we helped them acquire 2 new gantry cranes that would help with post-Panamax ships, which are the biggest ones that can really come into Port Tampa Bay. We've also helped them with the container yard and building wharves and sheet pile and everything like that. Right below that in the middle on the bottom is Tampa International Airport. And they do the same thing. They'll come to us and say, we have this project. We'd like to have you guys help us support it. And so we'll look at it, make sure that it fits our mission statement. And if it does, we'll help fund it. Aviation is kind of interesting because those funds come out of aviation fuel tax. So if you get on a plane and they fuel it up, they pay a tax. They also have passenger facility fees that go into some of these projects as well. And then that's how we fund those. Our aviation budget comes almost completely out of aviation fuel tax. So even though you may never use a Cessna and we're participating in projects at a general aviation airport, they're paying for it the same way we do with the road tax. And then on the bottom right-hand corner here, this is Skinner Boulevard. So has anybody been to Dunedin recently? But it's kind of a burgeoning little downtown area. It used to be like strip malls and like doctor's offices along Skinner Boulevard, and it's really changed now into a place that you want to spend a Friday evening. They have they have a bunch of restaurants, breweries. They've really made it a place that you want to go and hang out. They have live music a lot of times down at the park at the end of the road. And this is a state road. And so when we built this, it met the needs of the community. There were, not as many destinations. You didn't have as many pedestrians walking around. But now that context has changed, they have come to us and said, hey, we'd like to see if we can make Skinner Boulevard a little better, meet our community needs a little bit more. So we're going through a process with them. We're going to reduce this down to 1 lane in each direction. We're going to put in some roundabouts to slow traffic down. We're going to put some on-street parking on, as well as bulb outs, make it a little more accommodating. And then we're going to do some landscaping out there as well, so that it really becomes a place that you want to hang out, walk around. The street becomes part of the community rather than just something that cuts through it. Over on the bottom left-hand side, we have the new State Road 56 extension that we just opened a couple years ago. It's a brand new road, didn't exist before we put it in there. And then this is the West Shore interchange, and I'll talk a little bit more about that one coming up. So some of our big projects that we have going on right now, the first one is the Howard Franklin Bridge. If you go over the existing Howard Franklin Bridge off to the north, you will see it. This is going to be the new southbound bridge, which is Tampa to St. Pete. So that one that we're constructing, it's going to have 4 general purpose lanes and then 4 express lanes, 2 in each direction. And we're building that structure so that it can support light rail in the future or any sort of premium transit. If that happens, we'll actually shift and build some new lanes on the existing southbound bridge and accommodate the 2 express lanes on that one. So once this is completed, that'll become the southbound bridge. The northbound traffic will shift over to the existing southbound bridge. So if you're driving south now, you'll be driving on that same structure coming north, and we're going to tear down the southbound bridge. As of last month, we had completed about, I can never remember these numbers, so 55% of our bridge piles had been driven. 285 of the bridge footings had been completed. 270 of the 549 bridge columns had been completed. 94 of the bridge caps have been completed. There's 226 of those total. And then 198 of the bridge superstructure beams, which are like I-beams that run in between the bridge caps, those have been placed. And earlier this month, we just started pouring the new deck for that. So it'll be, we started in 2020, and we hope to have that completed in 2025. Another large project that we have, this is actually the biggest project that we've ever had here in District 7. This is the West Shore Interchange, which is just to the east of the Howard Franklin Bridge. So this project is going to completely reconstruct this interchange. It provides access to State Road 60, Kennedy Boulevard, Tampa International Airport, the Veterans Expressway, and it's really one of our most heavily traveled parts of the network out there. And right now it's congested, and there's a lot of weaving that goes on in that area. So we're going to reconstruct that and make it less weaving, a little more predictable for drivers. And we're also going to preserve some space in the middle for premium transit if that ever comes through. This is going to be over $1 billion project. It's so large that we actually had to break it up into 3 phases for construction companies to actually be interested in bidding on it. And right now we have some early works projects underway that are reconnecting the local grid that surrounds it, making some improvements there to help the community move around during construction, as well as allow us to do some detours at night when we do the construction. The anticipated begin date on that's 2024, and it won't finish until early in the 2030s. So it's a very long construction timeline. If you drive through there on a regular basis, I apologize in advance for that, but it'll be so much better when it's done. And then this is the Gateway Expressway project I was talking about. It's a toll road that's over in Pinellas County. It connects St. Pete Clearwater Airport, McMullen Booth, the Bayside Bridge, that area, down to 118th and 275. It'll be a toll facility. It's going to wrap up in early 2023. So that's the big project we have coming online soon. And then a little more impactful for USF community is Fowler Avenue PD&E. And so 5 years ago, the community came to us and said, hey, Fowler Avenue does a great job at what it's designed to do, but the land use along Fowler Avenue is really changing. How many of you have been here for a couple of years and have seen how much Fowler Avenue has really changed? We have all those restaurants that have popped up. You got the buildings that are coming closer to the roadway and parking behind those, and they just knocked down the hotel. There's going to be a couple high-rise residential buildings built there. So the community came and said, it's great for what it does, but it's not what we want. And so they asked us to look at it. What can we do there? So we kicked off a feasibility study that we wrapped up last year that identified some potential solutions out on Fowler Avenue. Some of the easy ones to implement, we've already begun implementing. They're on, if you drive west of here on Fowler Avenue, you'll see we built some pedestrian bulb outs at the corner radiuses. We kicked those out a little bit. So it shortens the turning distance or crossing distance for pedestrians and gives them a safe place to stand, and really they're very visible so that people or drivers see the pedestrians out there. And then we're going to kick off a PD&E study, which is project development and engineering study or environmental study. And so that looks at what can the road become, what changes in capacity can we do out there. So we've got a couple concepts like the one on the screen. All of them, the corridor, the project study area is from Florida to 56th, but in between like Florida and Bruce B. Downs, Nebraska and Bruce B. Downs, that's an area that we're going to look at transit accommodations. So we'll probably end up putting in a bus access or a bus only transit lane somehow, whether it'll be in the median or, separated to the outside, inside. It'll be somewhere out there. We'll have some nice bus alighting stations and frontage road opportunities out there as well. And it'll really make it much more inviting to walk down. Like right now, I don't think many of us want to go for a walk down Fowler Avenue. It's not the greatest environment, but hopefully when we're done with this project, it'll be a little more welcoming for the residents and visitors to the area. So that project is going to have a public meeting to discuss our concepts in 2023 in the second quarter. So keep an eye out for that. We've loved to have the students and people that live in this area and visit it recently or regularly come out and tell us what we're doing, look at our concepts, tell us whether it works for them or not. That's really a vital part of what we do, is do some public outreach to make sure that we're meeting your needs. So keep an eye out for that public meeting, and we'll welcome your comments during that time. And then, so for FDOT to be successful in what we do, we really need two things. And the first one of those is money, which everybody needs money. We need a significant amount of money. And so our budget is called the work program. It's a 5-year window of what we're going to spend, the dollars that are allocated to us by the legislature and the governor. So we look 5 years out and build all that, and it becomes our work program. It includes everything that we do. So whether it's planning, design, maintenance, construction, it's all in this. And we actually have a work program public hearing that'll be coming up in December. So if you're interested in that, you can look at the website that's down here at the bottom, or you can just Google FDOT work program and it'll pop up for you. And here's our budget. For the next 5 years across the state of Florida, we're going to have $45 billion worth of projects going out on the street. Almost $7 billion of that is just for resurfacing, so fixing the existing roads that we have. $17 billion is related to construction. That's usually bridges or new capacity, new sidewalks, that kind of thing. Building something that doesn't exist today, or doing a major rebuild of a roadway, that kind of thing. Right away, we're going to spend $1.5 billion across the state. $6.5 billion will be spent on planning and design consultants. So we use a lot of consultants at the department, and that's where that budget will go. For operations and maintenance, it'll be $6.5 billion as well. And then modal projects, which are those projects that we support at airports, seaports, transit, rail, all those things come to almost $5.7 billion. And then, when we were talking earlier, safety was one of the things that somebody said. And we plan on spending almost $720 million on just standalone safety improvements. Now, our resurfacing and our construction projects, those all have a safety component in there. But these are ones that we don't have a project in that area. So maybe we'll put in a new mid-block crossing. You can walk up, hit the button, it'll stop traffic, give you a safe way across the street. Signals, there's little things that we can do, like putting the back planes around a signal. When you're driving into the sun and that signal's there, you can't really see it that well. So we put that big black back pane across it. It blocks the sun a little bit, lets you see it. And they're also reflective, so you can get a better view of what's going on out there. So this is statewide. And here in District 7, in the 5 counties, we're going to spend $4.03 billion. And we have all those same categories on this slide. $700 million on resurfacing, $1.5 billion in construction. This only accounts for a portion of the West Shore Interchange project and some of the Howard Franklin Bridge as well, so that if we went out to 10 years, this would be a much larger number. And then we're going to spend $65 million just on safety projects here in the district. So you'll see a lot of those coming online. If you go down Bush Boulevard, we've already put in some of those safety improvements with the pedestrian accommodations, mid-block crossings, that kind of thing. But a lot more of those will be coming in the next 5 years. That's really a big push for us. And then the second thing we need is you all. So you play a very important role in transportation. It really impacts every single one of you, whether it's driving to or from work or school, or the cost of the goods that you buy and the availability of goods that you buy. I think we've all seen that in the last couple of years, that availability's gone down. We don't want transportation to be a problem or part of that. So we'd like you guys to be involved and help us solve those problems. And there's a couple different ways that you can do that. Number one is you can be involved in our transportation planning process. For all of our major capacity projects, we do a project development study. And as part of that, we do workshops and public meetings and public hearings. So when those happen and they impact you, or you're just interested in that particular project, come on out and look at and participate in those. You can, this QR code on the bottom left of the screen, that'll take you to our District 7 studies website where you can look at all the studies that we've done in the last forever and all the ones that are currently active. And if they're currently active, you can go online, register, and you'll get notification of those workshops and hearings as they come out. You'll also get updates on the project. And then you can also participate in the Metropolitan Planning Organization process. That is a county-based governmental agency. They help us plan and prioritize projects. They do a lot of studies and outreach to find out what you want your community to look like. And transportation plays a really big role in our communities. So they prioritize projects for us. They get a certain pot of money that we dedicate to their priority list. So they focus on things that can be done within that budget. And a lot of the stuff that they focus on is bicycle and pedestrian and, operational improvements, that kind of thing. They have 2 different committees or 3 different committees, all of them do, and then others have more than that. But one of them is a bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. So if you're interested, if you're an active bicyclist or pedestrian, you want to help guide their studies and investments in transportation, you can join that committee. Reach out to here in Hillsborough County, it is the Transportation Planning Organization, TPL. They also have a Citizens Advisory Committee and a Technical Advisory Committee. So once you guys get into your career fields and you feel like you are becoming an expert, feel free to reach out to them and see if you can join their Technical Advisory Committee. I think it's a really good thing to participate in. And like it says, speak up, be heard. Transportation impacts a whole lot of people, but not a lot of people let their voices be heard when it comes to the planning process. So make sure that you're one of those voices. And then the second way you can be involved is with an FDOT career. FDOT is a really good place to work. The state of Florida treats its employees pretty well. We get a lot of paid time off. We have benefits. You can go to college for free. If you participate in the tuition waiver program, you can take up to 2 classes a semester, and that's free. My wife actually got her master's degree for free through that program while she worked at the state. And then, some other benefits at the state is we have a ton of careers. There's no one particular thing that you're going to go into and that's all you're ever going to do. If you want to move around, you can. I've been in 4 or 5 different departments in my 15 years at the state, and nobody really gets pigeonholed unless they want to. So, look into it. And I'll go into some of the career fields that we have. How many people are engineering students in here? Everybody? All right. And online, is there anybody besides engineering students or any planners or anything like that? Yes, not. Okay. All right. Well, I'll mention the engineering career fields that we have the most. First one is engineering. So we have people that design roads, bridges, ponds, safety improvements. We also have folks that do materials testing. You name it, we probably have an engineer, unless it's, structural, residential buildings, that kind of thing. If it's related to transportation, we have somebody in a career field that you can go into related to engineering. On the planning side, we do have a lot of engineers that help us with planning. Some of our planning studies have to be signed by an engineer. So like our PD&E studies, we also review plans, we have aviation, seaport, transit grant managers. We have folks like me who work with other governmental agencies and get them to buy into or create a transportation plan. We have financial management. These are the folks who pay the bills, keep the lights on, and allow us to go out there and construct these roadways. We have real estate folks, and so the real estate, they do pretty interesting things. Like we'll go, and if we know in 5 years we're going to be widening a road and we're going to need some properties, they'll buy that property ahead of time, get it ahead of that. If it pops up for sale, we'll buy it from a willing seller rather than having to go through the eminent domain process. And while we own it, we'll rent it out so that it's not a drain on the state's assets. So we'll, a lot of the business buildings down in the West Shore Interchange area, we already own. And so we've been renting them out for the last 5 to 7 years since we bought them. And so these are the folks that handle that. They also go out and do like construction easements and that kind of thing. Program management is probably the most interesting of our groups. These are the folks who get the money in, and they tell us, they divide it out among the programs. They tell us what we can spend, how much we can spend, what types of projects we can spend it on. They also have some engineers that review plans, make sure that it meets our specifications, and do cost estimates on it to make sure that we're in the ballpark of what we're budgeting. They also have GIS people. We have an entire team that does GIS and helps us store all the data that I can imagine, you all can imagine. We create a lot of data, and so they help us store that on the GIS system. We also have surveying and mapping. This is actually where I started my career at FDOT, on a survey crew. So we have people that go out there and do surveying, drawing the maps in CAD, reviewing them, doing everything that is involved in surveying. Information system supports are the folks who make sure we have the best hardware and software for us to do our jobs. And then we have construction, which is where we utilize a lot of engineer PEs as well. So these folks, they'll manage construction contracts. They'll go out, they'll do inspections. So they'll do like slump tests to make sure the concrete meets specs. And they oversee our construction projects. Maintenance is one that has a lot of career fields as well. And so a lot of the engineering students that we get, they go into the maintenance field as well. It's a lot more than just the maintenance that you probably think of. Like, when I think of maintenance, I think of street sweeping and picking up debris and that kind of thing. But our maintenance folks do a lot more than that. They do access management. So if you own a parcel or a property adjacent to a state roadway, how you enter the state roadway is access management. It all goes into, do you need a turn lane? Do you need an acceleration lane? Do you need a median opening? They look at all those things to make sure that we have a safe system out there. Legal, these are our lawyers and paralegals that keep us on the right side of the law. Procurement, we use a lot of consultant contracts. I think you saw that in our budget. And so they're the ones who really allow us to, they help us acquire contracts, manage those contracts, that kind of thing. If you're interested in contracts, that's a great place to go to work. And then we have support, which are the ones who take care of the buildings that we work in and make sure that our fleet works and everything like that. And then we have a landscape architect as well. There's a team that goes out and they design the landscaping and make sure that it's, low maintenance but looks good. And so we utilize a lot of like Florida-friendly plants on our existing landscaping. But in essence, we need you guys, whether it's to be a general member of the public or to come work for us, whether that's working directly for the department or working for a consultant team. We still want you guys to be involved somehow in our transportation process. And there's a couple of different ways you can do that. So we have an internship program. Right now we have 5 interns in District 7. One of them's in my office, and he's helping us with all the planning activities we have going on. That QR code will take you to it, or you can just Google FDOT internships. They get open. We do like 3 different rounds a year, and they're a paid internship. It's 10 hours a week. It's really a great program to come in and learn, and it helps us know you, so that when you do apply for a job with us, we know your work ethic and are more willing to able to talk to folks about that. We also have the PE trainee program, and this is really an interesting program. So if you are an engineering student and you've graduated, or you're about to graduate with your bachelor's degree, I think we can hire 3 months before, 2 or 3 months before graduation. So what it is, it's a 4-year program where you come into the department and you'll spend time in every single department that we have. I'm actually very jealous of the kids who get to do this, because I never, there's so many departments that I don't know what half of them do. And so all these people who go through this program, they get to do that. So they'll go to every single department, whether they spend 1 day or 6 months there. It all depends on the size and complexity of what they do. But you do that for about 2.5 years. Then you have an 18-month period where you get to pick where you want to work for 18 months. So it can be in construction administration, it can be in design, whatever you want it to be. But the entire time, you'll be working for a licensed PE. So at the end of that 4 years, you've gotten the time working for an engineer and the experience to sit for your PE exam. And so it's a great program. You get paid, you get the experience, and when you come out of it, you have your PE. It's a fantastic program. If you're interested in it, actually, I have some flyers over on that table that you guys can take. Also, this QR code will take you to the website for it. And then this QR code will take you to our career website. It has every single job in the state of Florida, whether it's with DOT or Department of Management Services, whoever it is. You can go on there and you can sort it by agency. So if you only want to work in transportation, you can do that. You can also sort it by field. So if you only want to do engineering of some sort, you can sort it by that. Or if you want to live in South Florida, you can sort it by the nearest major city as well and look at all the job opportunities we have. It's updated pretty frequently and so, or every day. So keep an eye on it if you're interested in working for the state of Florida. And then here's our workforce development program. So this program is something that we're developing here in Tampa Bay, and it's where we work with our contractors and consultants to advertise their jobs on one, to connect people to jobs that are doing work for the department. I'm sure you guys have seen there's a lot of, there's a lack of employees out there available for all skill levels. And so this is one way we're trying to close that skills gap and help everybody recruit and retain folks and build careers that impact the transportation system in everybody's lives. And then finally, if I leave you with only, if you walk out of here and you only remember one thing, it's this, it's be safe out there on the road. One life lost on our roadway network is way too much. That's somebody's family. It could be their dad, their mom, their kid, their brother. We don't want that to happen. So slow down, pay attention to the rules of the road, and don't forget that alert today, alive tomorrow. So that's really should be all of our main focus. When we're driving, don't text and drive, pay attention to what you're doing. And if you got to slow down and get there a couple minutes later, that's okay as well. We don't want anybody to get hurt. And then let me make an offer to anybody that's listening or here in person. If you reach out to me, if you're interested in a career at FDOT and you think you know what you want to do, but you're not really sure, reach out to me. I'm probably not going to be the subject matter expert, but I'll get you in touch with somebody that is, we can, you can ask them questions, make sure you understand what the road or that road to that career looks like, and make sure it's right for you, or, confirm that it is. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll hook you up with the right person and make sure you get your questions answered and have the information you need to make a decision to come work for them. And other than that, I think that's all I got. Does anybody have any questions? We'll still have it when.
Back home. But I have some questions, but I'll start with one question and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the power. There is some projects coming in.
Mm-hmm.
I know besides having street is not pedestrian friendly, but are the other issues that need office things?
I think pedestrian bicyclist safety is probably the leading issue out there. If you notice, we put in, some quick curb with bollards, and to really reinforce some of the safety, but we want to do more than that. We really want to segregate the bicyclists and pedestrians away from the high-speed traffic. And we actually want to slow down traffic on Fowler Avenue. I mean, unless you're there during that peak period, there's like the rush hour in the morning and the afternoon, and then around lunch, there's a lot of speeding that goes on Fowler Avenue. So if we can constrict that down a little bit, make it, maybe narrow the lanes a little bit, put some visual that closes the area in. I mean, it's a very wide right-of-way out there. So if we can close it in a little bit visually, it slows people down and it creates a safer environment out there. So those are really, like you said, safety is probably our #1 thing, but we also do want to put some pedestrian accommodation or transit accommodations out there. And I know that the bus, HART, is looking at a BRT system that'll connect USF to downtown, and it'll use Fowler and then Florida and Tampa Street to get down there. And so we'd like to have some working with them if they'd like to have it, and some dedicated lanes so that BRT can move faster than regular traffic. And BRT is bus rapid transit for those who don't know.
Hi, Brian. This is Shubhankar. Great presentation, a lot of good information and a lot of support for students. I noticed that you spoke about the right turn channelization. I was fortunate to work on one of that project, the one that you spoke about, reducing the corner radius and all. So I had one question about connected corridors. Is the FDOT doing anything in terms of like connected vehicles and connected corridors? Like implementing Karma or something that, would facilitate vehicle to infrastructure communication and so on.
Yeah, so we definitely are. We're part of the Smart Cities Alliance, which USF is also a part of. And one of the pieces of that is working with, so most of our traffic signals, we install them and then the county or the city maintains and operates those. And so we're working with those folks to make sure that they have that technology as it comes online and becomes more prevalent in our, the cars that we all drive, that it will be ready to accept that technology and make the system work better. We are using some smart signal stuff in places. We're looking at freight signal priority. So like trucks accelerate much slower than cars. And so when you have a heavy truck area or truck route, sometimes we time those signals for cars, and the truck will get stopped at every one, and traffic can really only go as fast as the slowest vehicle that's on a road. So we're gonna go out there and put some sensors in that'll allow the traffic signal to shift a little bit and slow down so those trucks can make it through all the lights and really clear up the traffic on those roads. But we're definitely looking at and planning on incorporating smart signals, connected vehicle technology, that kind of thing.
Thank you. I have one more question so you spoke about connected signals and smart signals. So I was wondering if the FDOT is planning on hosting like the SPAT messages live feed or something. I know the VDOT is hosting that data and it's helping people build applications on those. So do you know if the FDOT is planning on facilitating like a data hub or something where we could get access to these patch signals, the timings and so on, so we could build applications on those?
That's outside of my realm of knowledge. I have no idea, but I would assume we have plans to do something through the research office or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes.
Question is, how do you predict how many years that each project will be needed and how flexible that is? And another thing is what are the strategies for control the cost of those big projects?
So how do we determine the time? That goes through our construction review process, and they look at it and they'll model that out on how long it'll take to do certain things. A lot of our projects take a very long time, but that's because we keep the roadway open most of the time. And so that exponentially increases the amount of time that a construction project takes. If we didn't have to keep the West Shore Interchange project, we could probably do West Shore Interchange open during that construction project. We could get it done a lot quicker than the 8 to 10 years that we're forecasting that it's going to take. But so we model the construction time, and that gives us the construction contract days. And I think that's one of the reasons that we break some of those really big projects up into different phases, is to control the risk for both us and the contractor. So The contract, if they know they're in construction for 10 years on a project, there's no, or even 3 years, there's really no way that they know how much that concrete's going to cost them in month 30 versus what it costs them in month 1. And so they'll bid on what they think it's going to cost them at the peak. So when we break these projects up, it really does help to mitigate some of that risk on both of our ends. So we're not paying for a really high anticipated rate in 10 years. We're paying for what we think it's going to cost over the next 3 to 4 years. And then, the reality of the construction business is that we lock in most of our contract rates at the beginning. And so when the rates fluctuate, if they go down, we lose. If they go up, the contractor, it costs them a little bit more. But if it goes down, they make a little bit more. And so, probably at the end of the day, it all comes out. There's that nexus in the middle that everybody's even in the long run.
Hi, Brian. Sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So when you issue these RFPs, so are they like amendable in the later time? Or so, for example, like if you issue an RFP in terms of technology, which will be completed in say in like the next 3 years, but technology is moving at such a fast pace right now, is that in 3 years' time when you actually complete the work, that technology is obsolete and something new has come up. So do you have any considerations in terms of those?
Yeah, we can always, amend an agreement, especially when it comes to professional services type contracts like technology or even consulting. We can amend agreements to bring in new technology. The one thing that we tend to shy away from is if it really expands the scope. We don't want to do that because that's not how we acquire whoever it is to provide those services. So if it really expands the scope, we'll probably put a new contract out there so that we can get competitive procurement on that contract instead of funneling it to one that we've acquired that it may not have been covered under. But that incremental increase in scope, I think, is something that we are willing to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of people talking about having the roads, less for cars and more pedestrian bikes. Will make both safer, the pedestrian and bike, and the cars, because as you mentioned, slower speeds are gonna be safer. But when I hear these debates, especially here in the US and where I come from, it's really, for me, and what I see is, thousands of years ahead of us to kind of put everything just, do like Europe style. How do you see this debate, and what do you think?
I think, so to me, it's important that we look at our roadways and try and determine who the main customer along that roadway is and provide a quality of service on the facility that is good for that customer. So there's certain places like the interstate. The purpose of the interstate is to take vehicles off our surface streets and move people at a relatively high rate of speed. Whereas a neighborhood street, we don't want to have a lot of people traveling at a relatively high rate of speed. We want people to slow down. And so as the context changes along a road, I think we need to focus on maybe a different user for each segment of the road as the community context changes. And, you hear a lot about complete streets, right? I think one of the things that people miss out on in complete streets is nobody ever talks about like freight on complete streets. It's always the bicycle pedestrian or like a cafe that has, seating on the sidewalk and that kind of thing. And so complete streets is really building the right road in the right place. And so some places you're not going to want to have a comfortable place for bicyclists. We don't want bicyclists on, a high-speed, high-volume roadway. Maybe we need to build bicycle facilities on a parallel road that's lower speed, has less people on it. So I think it's really just measuring what you're trying to accomplish in that area And some places, slowing down traffic is the appropriate answer and making it safer. And you can still move the same amount of people. Maybe it just takes, it spreads out your peak congestion time a little bit more, but you're doing it in a safe manner. I think that's got to be an acceptable trade-off in certain locations, you know? So, yeah. Oh, you can ask all the questions you want.
Probably the last one. Probably, I don't know, but Florida could be probably more lenient in terms of the restriction. I don't know if that's, because when I lived in different states, I felt that police were more strict, so I was more, afraid of, doing something.
Yeah.
So, with that, term, does FUTU or District 7, have, some policy suggestions or anything to that side?
For like the enforcement side, law enforcement. So we don't, we leave that up to our law enforcement partners. We do have some grant programs that we work with local law enforcement and communities for them to increase their, speed related traffic management, that kind of thing. So a community will come to us, they'll ask for some funds, we'll evaluate, what their needs are out there, and then potentially provide them with funding to pay overtime for police officers to do speed management and traffic control and that kind of stuff. So enforcement is one of the pillars of having a safe community or a safe network. But like you said, a lot of it is, individual actions. Every accident is preventable. There's nothing, whether it's, the pedestrian or the driver that's at fault, whatever happened and whatever caused that is preventable. And so that's why paying attention is really important. And education and enforcement are the other, things that we need to have a lot more of. So yeah, I'm glad you're studying roadway safety. That's awesome.
Attendees. I know when Asim was asking question because he didn't have microphone, so some of our online attendees didn't hear it very clearly. So basically, the last question Asim asked was about enforcing the misbehavior, considering the traffic safety, and Brian has given some answers on that. So we still have, a couple minutes. I just want to call for another round if you have any questions. Both online and.
Does it sponsor international student visa for work?
No, we do not. Yeah. But I know that a lot of our consultants do, consultant firms do.
Yes, the last question is about if FDOT or the section office sponsor international students. The answer is no, but FDOT actually work a lot with consulting and engineering companies, and those companies will sponsor international students, and you still can work with FDOT. And I know some of them actually have on-site consultant sitting at FDOT district office, right?
Yeah.
So work very closely with our government agents. All right, so if no more questions, please join me, and thank our speaker, Mr. Brian Hunter again. Thank you for his presentation. Yeah. Thank you so much for give us an overview of FDOT. It's very useful for our students.
Yeah. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you in touch with somebody else in the field that you are interested in.
Okay, great. And we have next week we have Dr. Lee Wang from University of Georgia, and he will talk about how to use the digital twin in the infrastructure research. Okay, so I hope to see everybody in the seminar, either in the classroom or online. Thank you so much, and see you next week.